Hi everyone, this is Angela Shetty and I'm giving you a quick overview of HSC111 Assessment 2. So this little video is designed to help you start in the right direction and understand what's required of this second assessment in your unit. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm delivering to you today from the land on the Larrakia Nations people and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. So what is this? This is a resource development task. So this is all about putting into action what we've been covering in the learning in the unit so far. We've learned a lot about the different ethical pillars. We've learned a lot about how they are placed within the healthcare sector. So this is about your opportunity to show us that you understand it and put it into practice yourself. It's worth 30% of your overall marks and it covers your learning outcomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Have a look in your unit information in this in the LearnLine unit and you'll be able to see what those learning outcomes are. It's really good to have a look at those because it kind of gives you a little bit of a scope as to what we're trying to get you to focus on within this particular assessment. It's due on week 8, Friday the 2nd of May, and it's 1,000 words approximately for the written document, and we have given you a template for that. So what we want you to do is develop a checklist resource for a disability organisation who've only recently started delivering multidisciplinary services, and they're telehealth services. So that means they're services that are going to be delivered online. They're going to be delivering this to a very remote First Nations community in the Northern Territory called Nooka. And what you need to know is it's a paediatric multidisciplinary service who will be working with parents, family and children within the community who require these services. Now, the audience that you're aiming your particular checklist is to the multidisciplinary non-Indigenous clinicians who are actually based in Northern Sydney. So have a little think about that because obviously they're non-Indigenous, they're based in Northern Sydney, they're delivering to a group of people who live in a very different place to them and they have come from a very different culture than them. So really like some core points there for you to focus on straight away. The objective of your checklist resource is to better inform the clinicians, as we've said, who are based in Sydney, about the context of Nooka and the ethical considerations they need to be aware of to demonstrate best ethical practice. So presentation-wise, we've given you a resource or a template, if you like, that you can follow, and we've provided the idea headings to use with that. And we have addressed idea in one of our Collaborate sessions together. So look back on that if you need to. We want you to write a paragraph or two under each heading, and it should be presented like an essay. Okay, and then when you've got the checklist is supposed to be submitted as those guides that you would need to give your target audience in making sure that they practice in an ethical manner when working with this community delivering telehealth services. Okay. When we say essay format, that does mean that, think about, it needs to have a structured introduction, structured paragraphs, and be, an essay is always really well sorted in how it delivers information. It should be referenced, as we said, with APA referencing. There is an APA referencing session that the library is holding on the 29th of April, so you can actually access that before you do this assessment if you need. Really important that you get your APA referencing skills up to scratch. Okay, so this is the template we've provided, and we've given you an approximation of the words to sort of put into each area. So that first section there, identify, then determine, then explore, and then act. Okay, and so that very last section there, act, is all about you putting that checklist together. So let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail. Okay, so the idea framework, it's that ethical decision-making framework that we use and that we've pulled apart in our sessions to help us work through how we should approach certain dilemmas or situations in an ethically safe way, okay, when we're doing our practice. So the purpose of this framework is to provide a step-by-step fair process to help guide healthcare providers and administrators in working through ethical issues encountered in the delivery of healthcare. So it really helps you have difficult conversations. It helps you find ethical solutions to difficult problems. And it helps you understand how you need to engage with your team members, your resources, and so forth in an ethically safe way. So the first part we want you to do is start off with the idea is to start off with identify the facts, the problems. Review the background you provided. What do you know? What's unique about the community? What's unique about being in a remote area? What's are those cultural considerations you might need to consider when working with this team? What's the problem of distance around things like telehealth? Are we going to have think about language services and so forth? Are you going to need to have cultural advisors? Want you to sort of put down what you can see what might be all the problems and all the facts that come around for this multidisciplinary non-Indigenous health team to deliver this telehealth service, okay, to this remote community, remembering that it's also focused as a pediatric service. Okay, because then you've got to bring in that extra layer of considerations, don't you, around working with children safely. So the next one is determine, okay? And so that's determine the ethical principles, or the 4 pillars of ethics as we often refer to them, okay? And where there might be tension, or where you might need to start thinking about providing some additional guidance and instructions, because this is all going to inform that checklist, all right? Now I've put them down here for you, and we've got our autonomy, our beneficence, our non-maleficence, and our justice. Okay, and remember we have covered all of this in our unit and linked you to some good readings, so please go back and brush up on those. The third one is explore. So explore the options possible to mitigate unethical practice. So again, these should be quite specific to the ethical pillars and relate to the case study we've provided. It should, in relation to the case study, remember we've got a few different considerations around the community, the health professionals themselves and their behaviour, the telehealth service, and the paediatrics. All right, and finally, create a brief checklist for clinicians to use and guide their actions. Okay, so you're then going to list what your ethical issue is going to be, what you mitigate, and what your mitigation strategies are going to be. Okay, so you really need to now, what I want you to do is to tease this out, that if you were actually working in this service, you'd be able to look at this and it will tell you about certain ethical issues you might encounter while you're delivering this service and while you're working with this particular community and their people. Okay, and you're going to list what the mitigation strategies might be. So again, I've given you one tip that might be around language. What might be an issue that you come across with language, okay, in working across these 2 very different community areas? Finally, what's the core questions? Okay, let's just break it down one more time. There's ethical issues that are going to arise in quite a different few areas, aren't there, with this scenario? It is quite broad, and that's great because it gives you lots of room to explore. So not everyone's going to give me the same response, I get that, but there are going to be some foundational ethical considerations that I hope I see in everyone. And they should all be focused on your multidisciplinary health professionals working in this space, delivering a paediatric-based telehealth service. You're going to be working across parents, families, and children, and they're going to be in a very remote community. And the multidisciplinary health professionals, they're based in Northern Sydney. So think about all of those different factors, and I'm sure there's a few more in there that you can think to add to. What I want you to also think about how you're going to research this, because you need to get some background information. You're going to need to find out a little bit more around telehealth services, around how they might use these services in remote communities. What do we know about paediatric telehealth services? What do we know about multidisciplinary teams? So start thinking about search terms and start breaking it down. So we might have about 3 sort of statements or more, and we can break them down then into different keywords, okay? Your search terms: pediatrics, telehealth, multidisciplinary. Now, there's a few more you can add to that, isn't there? And this means this is how you start to play around when you're searching for your really good articles, whether you be using Google Scholar or whether you be using the library, CityU Library Scope. Okay, you might want to add in remote community. You might want to do a search specifically on Nooka community, find out a little bit more about them. Okay. So those search terms, as said, I've had a little play with them, and I can tell you there's some great research and resources out there that will really help you with this assessment. Just make sure you reference them all. Don't get stuck. Remember, if you are getting, caught up trying to find resources and that, and you're getting a little bit lost, use CityU services. Now, if you go onto the CityU library page, I've circled it on here. You can see that assessment help. Click on that tab. Now, that tab actually takes you to quite a lot of services. You can find some resources to show you how to get started with putting together an essay. You can find that APA library session that you can book in for. And you can also find a link to through the language and learning support team where you can make one-on-one appointments with an online tutor. And you can also schedule some time with a librarian if needed. Okay, so you'll find that we've given you a very brief marking criteria for this. Read through it, okay? You can see where the bulk of the marks are there, can't you? In those 2 key points there. Outline how the identified ethical issues might be mitigated. Outlines why these ethical issues are important to be aware of specific to the scenario, and implies the ethical principles 4 pillars of ethics. Okay, so really kind of keep an eye on those 2. And then, of course, you've got your additional marks to your communication down the bottom and your referencing and so forth. And again, additional marks up there, being able to clearly identify the relevant ethical issues specific to this scenario. Finally, submission, you'll be able to see this submission point in the unit. So that's where you submit it. Please submit it as a Word document, okay? No PDFs or other documents. When you submit, you will see this image, and you see that similarity report there, okay? That similarity report tells you around plagiarism. So it's going to tell you if you've copied or poorly paraphrased from other sources. It does not tell you about AI use. So please don't get confused with that and look at that and think, oh, I haven't used AI. Only us as the lecturers have access to that Gen AI report through Turnitin. So this particular submission point, or if you use a draft submission, will only tell you about if your document's been linked to other online resources, not to AI. So just don't use AI, basically. Make sure you hand in everything in your own words. It should all be your own work, showing your own understanding of this. Okay, so that summarises it. I hope after listening to this, you have a better idea of how to get started on this assessment. Please reach out. We've got the discussion post set up there. Pop your questions in there, because if you've got that question, I'm sure there'll be other students who do too. And good luck with the assessment, and I really look forward to reading your submissions.